Okay. Tonight, we're going to be in, of course, we were in Psalms 110 last Wednesday, but we're actually going to go all the way to Psalm 127 tonight, skip several, for a few reasons. Not that they're not important. It's just some of the things, or most of the things that were covered in some of these Psalms are some things that we've already covered pretty extensively. Then when you get into Psalms 120 through Psalms 134, you get into the songs of ascent, or songs of degrees, as I think the King James actually says. And these are a group of 15 psalms, or songs, that they would sing or chant as they would go on their journey to Jerusalem. Each time for the feast days, the Feast of Pentecost and the Feast of the Tabernacles and so on. Psalms that they would sing. Now, I thought about starting at Psalms 120 and going through, but as I said, there's 15 psalms of ascent, and all of them are anonymous except for 4 was contributed to David, and 1 contributed to Solomon. And Solomon's is the one at Psalms 127. It's right in the middle. There's 7 before it, there's 7 after. And I think this is really the central theme of what these Psalms of Ascent are. And most of them are of praising to God and giving God thanksgiving, as we've talked about extensively through Psalms. But I just thought that this Psalm was very interesting when you think about the placement of it. If you think about the content of this psalm and what Solomon actually wrote here. In the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon expressed the importance of realizing that life was empty, that it was meaningless without God. You think about Solomon and all of his writings, you think about the position that he was in, the riches, he was wise, he was powerful, and that after time, he realized even with all the riches, all the wisdom, everything that he had, he said he didn't keep anything from him. Everything that he could think of, everything that he was involved in, everything that was basically on the face of the earth, if we don't put God as part of it, at the central part of it, it's vanity. It's meaningless. No matter what we strive for, no matter what we try to achieve, it's meaningless without God. And you think about this Psalm 127, it really gets at the core of man, I think, of man wanting to build a place, a home, if you will, protect that home, do everything he can to achieve these things in the home that he can, and in life that he can. And as Solomon said, these things are meaningless. They're in vain if you don't have God. Think about everything that you want to achieve in your life. Think about what you are trying to teach your children to achieve and to aspire for, and what we call success. These things don't mean anything unless God is at the center of it. We don't have a life where we divide our life up like a pizza, if you will, or a pie where we got different sections for each area of our life, and one of those sections is a section for God. Our life should be divided up, but God at the very center of it. That's a part of each and everything that we do. And I think that's what this psalm actually talks about, and I thought that's why it'd be a good one just to get the whole sense, basically, of what these Psalms of Ascent are. So as we go through this tonight, we'll read through it, then we'll kind of get some application of how we can apply this in our lives. So as we go through this, let's look at this psalm. It says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. So as we look through this psalm, I want us to look first here in the first part of this psalm. It says we've got to realize if we're going to have success, if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve, we've got to realize that the Lord builds. The Lord is the one who builds it. Notice what he says. He says, unless the Lord builds the house, the labor is in vain. Again, who built it? Think about this when, we could put this in the context of remember when the remnant came back and they started to rebuild? I think Ty even done a lesson about this one Sunday night. It says when they were building, why would they want to build back in Jerusalem? Why do you think in Nehemiah there they wanted to do that? Was there a reason? Been in exile, come back, see the ruins. Why did they want to build back? Did they have any trouble building back? Said in one point that they'd build and do what? We build with one hand and they had to do what? Put guard and put a sword in the other hand, didn't they? They realized that there's a lot of, when you're building and you're should be making God at the center of it, there's still a lot of things that we have to face in this life. There's still a lot of things that we have to confront that will try to keep us from doing that. And what will most of all keep us from doing that, of building what we need to build and realize the Lord needs to be the one that builds it, is that if we don't put Him at the center of it, what's the purpose of building something? Take, for example, built this building here. What purpose does it serve? Does it serve a purpose?
For us to be able to gather.
Yeah, to gather and worship. What did we build the other building? Fellowship. Is God a part of that? Is God a part of this? There's our homes. We build our homes. What's the purpose of our home? To keep us safe, to have somewhere to go. There's a purpose for physically what we build. But if in that process of building things, if God is not the center of it, if God is not the one who's building it, if God is not the foundation of it, what's it all going to come to? Remember what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7? Let's look at that. Matthew chapter 7, He said, "Therefore who hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew, beat on that house, and it did not fall. For it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rains descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Let me ask you this question. What kind of house did the wise man build, and what kind of house did the foolish man build? What did they look like? Do we know? They could have looked exactly the same. The foolish man could have even built a better house. It could have looked better aesthetically. But in the end, what mattered? It mattered the foundation. It mattered what it was built upon. It didn't matter what it looked like. It didn't matter what the purpose of building. Both of them may have built and said, "I need a place for my family. I want a place that my family can enjoy. I want a place that people can walk around and they can look at my house and say, 'Oh, what a great house that is. Oh, look how great it is. Oh, look at the bedrooms that it has, the bathroom it has. It's got a basement. It's got it's got everything that you can need to support your family, to protect your family, to make your family comfortable." Both of them could have had that until the storms come. Where's the protection then? The protection lies in the foundation. The protection is what it's built upon. So if the Lord doesn't build the house, if it's not built as Jesus says, "Whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them," in other words, on His word, following Him, it's to no avail. It's in vain. It's not going to protect us from anything. It's not going to bring us what we think we need when these tragedies still hit. That's what Solomon is saying. Solomon says this in several different places. But he's saying that the Lord, we got to realize that it's the Lord that has to build. I have to build on His foundation. I have to build on the things in which He teaches. That has to be the foundation. Everything else is secondary. And this hits at the core because as a man, I want to have something for my family. I want to do something for my family to protect them. I want to make sure I'm providing for them. That's what we want to do, isn't it? But all of that's going to be in vain if the Lord doesn't do the building. Notice what Paul says about it. Or Psalms 127 verse 1. Go one more if you don't mind, Jonathan. I think I put it on there. Let's see. Well, let's go to this one first. I'm sorry. It says, when the whirlwind passes by, the wicked is no more. That must have been where Rellin was talking to me when I was putting them in. When the whirlwind passes by, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. Notice what Solomon said. When the whirlwind passes by, the wicked is no more. So when something comes by, when it's, just think about it. If God, what he's saying is, if God's not the foundation, if we don't have some stronghold to hold on to, and we're just doing what we think is best, what we think is right, and when he says the wicked is anyone that's not following what God says, when the whirlwind comes by, we're no more. We're that house that went splat. All that was to no avail. It was in vain. But he says here, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. What does everlasting mean? It's never ending. So we know what's truly important. Let's just take, for example, if we lose everything tomorrow, the tangible things around. If it happens like Job, we see a line of people coming, and each one of them got bad news for us. Guess what? You lost this, you lost this, you lost this. Another one comes, you lost this. If that happens tomorrow, are we going to crumble? Are we going to go splat? Or are we still going to be standing? We have an everlasting foundation. Now notice what Paul says that foundation is in 1 Corinthians. He says, for no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is who? Jesus Christ. There's no other foundation. So everything that we do, whether it's our personal home as far as our home life, whether it's our congregational life like I talked about Sunday, you know, we can get caught up in so many distractions that the things that we think that matter are really in vain. It really doesn't matter. All the things that I think I've got at my house that I think that's going to help me physically doesn't mean a thing if God's not a part of it. All the things that we do here, all the programs, all the events, it don't matter who we pass through here at this pulpit and have preach at us for 2 or 3 days. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what we do over in the fellowship hall. It doesn't matter what we do on retreat. None of that matters if God is not the center of it, if that's not the purpose of why we're doing it. You follow me? You see, these things can, as Solomon says, they may look good to us. He was wise. He was rich. He was powerful. He could do anything he wanted to. Everything was his beck and call. And he said, if God's not the center, it's all in vain. All of it. That's a little scary, isn't it? To think, does that mean I have to really evaluate my life and see if God's at the center of it? Does that mean I really have to evaluate my Christian life and see if everything that I think that I'm doing is good, is God truly at the center of it? I mean, think about that. It gets to where we can think that we're doing it for the right reasons, but if I'm doing it for my own reasons, because I feel like that's what I need to do, and God's not the center of it, as he says here, it's in vain who does it. He says the labor is in vain. Except the Lord build the house, verse 1 again. They labor in vain who build it. As Jesus here tells the story, he tells it that it's the house that goes splat or the house that remains. And it's up to us which one that is. It depends on what the foundation is. In Proverbs 27, did I put that up there? In Proverbs 27 and verse 1, well, I would have had it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. So it comes down to the Lord builds, that our labor is in vain if he doesn't build, and our protection is in vain if God's not a part of it. Now, Do we do anything to protect our homes and our family? You got any cameras at your house? Got any security alarm system? Got any guns at your house? Got anything to... Well, yeah. Probably everybody sitting here does. We probably got, 50 at the house and 3 on us. We do all that we can to... Actually, I've got less than that because my belly won't let me go all the way down to my ankle now, so ain't no use having one down there anymore. But we do all we can to protect ourselves, don't we? Because that's what we want to do. That's what we're trying to do. As it says here, unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. So it's in vain. This protection that I want to do, it's going to be in vain, if the Lord is not the center of it. Now, does that mean that nothing bad's ever going to happen to a Christian? I'm following God as strictly as I possibly can, as lovingly as I can. I'm doing all that I can to walk in light. Does that mean that nothing's ever going to happen to me? No. Just because I carry a gun, does that mean that nothing's ever going to happen to me? No. It means physically I'm trying to do all I can to protect myself, but I want God to be at the center of my life, so I do all I can as a Christian for those blessings that He promises us to do all that I can to protect myself spiritually. But there's times that there are going to be things that's going to happen. But even if they happen, just like if the storm comes and beat on my house, it doesn't stop the storm from coming. Him being the foundation just means I can weather the storm. The same storm still come to both houses, didn't it? So the watchman watches in vain if we realize that it's the Lord that does the protection, that if He's not a part of my life, all this that I'm doing again is in vain, as Solomon says. He says the watchman stays awake in vain. We trust our own might rather than God's. And here's how we can do this. When we start thinking that we know better, that we've got a better way, that we've got a better plan, this is going to do me more good and protect me more as a Christian, this is what I think I ought to be doing, and it's not what God wants to do. So when we start straying away from what God wants us to do, then we're leaving His protection. Isn't that what Hebrews 10:25 says? What does that say? When I sin willfully, there remains what? No more sacrifice for me. What have I done? I've walked out of the light. So I've stepped out of the light. There remains no more sacrifice for me. While I'm walking in the light, the blood of Jesus Christ cleanses me, continues to cleanse me. But when I willfully step out of that light, there remains no more sacrifice for me. It doesn't mean just because I sin, when I do something willfully, when I willfully walk away from Him, when I willfully turn my back and I think, I can do this myself. I can make these decisions. I know what's best for me. See, I'm like that when it comes to my family. I never like to read any kind of books on raising kids. Not that mine turned out perfect. You've seen them. Yeah, that was a little dig. But, we're never perfect. I hope I did more things right than I did wrong as a parent. But I never, ever, ever wanted anybody to tell me how to do it other than God. Somebody would come tell me, Ronnie, you ought to be doing this. I never wanted to hear it. Don't come tell me how to raise my kids. We're all like that. We're protective of our families. We think we know what's best. We think we can do it the right way. And sometimes we do that with God, though. What happens is we think, well, yeah, God says to do it this way, but I know best. I know best how to build my house. I know best how to protect my house. I know best what to do in God's own house. As a church family, I know what's best to do. We get into this. And what Solomon's saying here, this is in vain. You can stand on the wall all you want to and stay awake and put toothpicks in your eyes to keep yourself awake. None of that matters if God isn't the one doing it. If you've turned your back on Him and He's not doing the building, our labor's not guided by Him, and our protection is not involving Him, none of that matters. So as he goes through this, these first few verses here is pretty blunt. He's telling us, you can do that all you want to. If God's not a part of it, you're going to hear, depart from me, I never knew you. But Lord, didn't I cast out demons in your name, do many wonders in your name? Didn't I do all of this in your name? Nope. I don't know you. Isn't that what he's going to say? That's what Matthew 7 tells us. That I didn't do it the way that he wanted it done. He didn't guide it. He didn't protect it. He didn't build it. So the labor was in vain. Verse 2 says, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. So here again, sometimes we can get into, who in here wouldn't work hard for their family? Did you ever get up early for your family? Did you ever stay up late because of your family? Did you ever work long hours because of your family? You ever work weekends because of your family? You ever spend all... Now, let's back up a little bit. Were they for your family? Or was it because what we deem success is stuff, and I had to do that to pay for the stuff? I have to work more hours to pay for this. I have to work more hours because I've got to provide for my family. As it says here, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. All this sacrifice that you're making for your family, again, if God is not the center of it, what's Solomon say? It's all in vain. Whew, all that overtime for nothing. All that hard work for nothing. All that, sacrifice for nothing. But who wouldn't do it? That's what we're supposed to do, right? We make sacrifices. We do these things for our family. But again, if God is not the center of it, does it really amount to anything? Then he goes on. Notice he kind of changes a little bit. So, the Lord, he builds, he labors, he protects, but all these things are in vain if he's not part of it. But notice what he says he does here. He gives us something too. Starting in verse 3. He says, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has a quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. So Solomon here concludes, and it's a pretty long conclusion, but it's filled with a lot of things, that children that the Lord give us is a gift. Now here's the thing. If you go back to verse 3 and look at it for a minute. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. The King James actually says it a little bit different. King James says, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. Now think about that for a minute. Whose reward is he talking about children are? Is it the parents? Whose reward is it? It says the fruit of the womb is a reward. Whose reward? Whose reward is it? What's that? Could be. That's what I've always thought. That's the parent's reward. Your offspring is your reward. But think about how this says this. That's why I like the King James Version. It says, behold, children are a heritage. So children are a heritage from God, right? It's an inheritance. It's something that he gives. It's a gift. Our heritage from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Think of it this way. Our children are his. Something that he gives us as an investment. And what kind of reward is he going to get back? They're his reward. So we are stewards of the investment in which God gives us, aren't we? He entrusts us with that. So the question remains is, what do we do with that? What do we do with that investment that God is? It's basically like the parable of the talents. What do we do with what God gives us? And what is the reward that he's going to get back for that? Now, think about this as we kind of go through this. That when we're thinking about them as a inheritance, we think of this as a reward that God gives us. It's not something that we need to take lightly. Parenthood is not a easy job, is it? Anybody think it's easy? I don't think it's easy. I don't know if I've ever said this before. When I've got 3, 2 of them married so far. One of them, maybe eventually, he says he's going to be there till we croak. So he can just have the house, I guess. But on both of my daughter's weddings, you know what aggravated me the most? That almost infuriated me when people would say to me, anybody got to guess what it was? It was come through, and I remember them shaking me and Tanya's hands, and I don't know, somebody here may have been somebody who said it. They said, boy, you sure were blessed with good kids and found good son-in-laws, which is true. But that actually irritated me when individuals said that. You know why? It was hard work. It was a blessing, but it was hard work to raise children. When it got to that wedding night, I was like, they're yours now, no give you backs. You know, it's yours. It's all yours now. I'm not saying that they were difficult. I'm not saying my children were bad. I'm saying as a parent, raising children are hard work. And that's what we're striving for, isn't it? We're striving to get them to adulthood. We're striving to get them to have their own families. And it's not that, we were just blessed and we never had to do anything. And I understand what people mean, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, that was hard work. We made sacrifices. We made decisions that made our friends upset because we didn't let our children do the same thing they did, that made even people in our own family upset because we didn't let people do things that other people did because we thought this is how we should raise our kids. Remember, I didn't like anybody telling me how to do it. So as my wife and I, as we did these things, I thought, there was a lot of sacrifice went into this. There was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of mistakes, and most of them on my part, not my wife's. It was just, parenting is a process, isn't it? And what I'm trying to get at is we don't need to take that lightly. And I think I did sometimes. We need to make sure that realize this is what God has given us. What return is He getting? What reward is He getting? What did I do with, what kind of steward was I with what He had given us? So as we think about this, as Solomon is saying here, notice, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is His reward. But notice, he goes on. Verse 4. He said, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. So, they're this gift. I'm responsible for what I do with them and how they turn out. So I'm like a warrior that's an archer that's got these bows and these arrows, and I'm responsible for what I do with them. Does an archer have any responsibility? Well, let me ask you this. Does anybody have any responsibility with any weapon that they have? Is there any responsibility of it? What's that? Yeah. Those of you that may take a gun class, you know what they tell you when you fire that bullet? What are you responsible for? Everywhere that bullet goes. Our instructor said you don't need one that's going to go through them and 15 people behind them. You want to stop the threat in front of you, right? The same thing with an arrow. When it comes to, if it's comparing the arrow as children, I've got a responsibility, one, to learn how and know how and get instructions to how to fire that arrow, right? I need to know how to operate a bow. I need to know how to make these arrows or fix these arrows or make sure that I can get them where I can point and shoot them in the right direction. I can't just pick up a bow and arrow and expect to hit the target and never learn, can I? I can't expect to do that. I have to make sure that I'm trained, I'm disciplined myself, that I can discipline those arrows to go where they're supposed to go. I've got an awesome responsibility there. He's not just saying, they're very blessed that he got a quiver full of arrows. Oh, these arrows just appeared. I can automatically know how to shoot them. They're going to go right to the target. Yeah, we're blessed, the one that's got a quiver full of them. But I'm responsible for that quiver that's full, aren't I? I'm responsible for those arrows. I'm responsible for, I've always thought of it this way. I'm not responsible for the choices my children make as they get older. I don't think I'm responsible for that as a parent. But I am responsible for how I've taught them to make those choices, aren't I? I'm responsible for how I've taught them to make the choices in which they make. Now, it's not a guarantee. As we go to Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way they should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. This isn't a guarantee a child's going to be a Christian when they grow up. It's not a guarantee that when I pull that bow back and I shoot that arrow, it's not an absolute guarantee it's going to hit that target. I could do everything I possibly can do to make sure I'm trained the very best that I can to shoot these arrows, but is there anything that could happen that could keep that arrow from hitting the target? There could be some things that's out of my control that happen that I don't know that's about to happen. Or there's some things that's in my control that I've done the very best that I can do, but I still didn't do it right. There's things that just happen in life. The point of this and the point of what Solomon is saying that, oh, you're just blessed to have kids, you better hope you have a lot of them, and you're going to do good no matter what. It's not like that at all. It's you're responsible. You've been given something. God has invested something in you. And what He's invested in you, in this particular case, is a family. Now, not everybody has the same talent. Not everybody gets invested the same way. But what God does invest in me, I'm responsible for the return, the reward that I'm going to give Him back. And I have some responsibility in that. And I have to take that seriously. And it goes back to what Solomon's saying here. Solomon's saying, unless the Lord builds the house, unless He's the one protecting the city, unless we realize these things come from Him and I'm responsible for that, it's all in vain. It's all in vain. What if I don't take my responsibility seriously as a parent? I don't look at it as a heritage. I don't look at it, I've got to give a reward back to God. What kind of return am I going to get? I don't know. Look around and see. You know, all of this just ties in together that goes with everything that Solomon's ever said. Hey, I've tried it all. I've seen it all. I've done it all. I've been in control of most of it. He was so powerful. He was in control, and he said, here's what it comes down to. It's all in vain if God's not the one controlling it. If God is not the one that's a part of it. But again, it's a sense of directing. It's a sense of investment. It's a sense of realizing what God has done. And then, verse 5 says, happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. At the gate is where, at that time, where all the business transactions took place. But it's also, you do have this expectation as you grow older and you've raised your children that they can turn around and protect you. They can turn around and be an honor to you. They turn around, as it says here, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. Now, they've grown up. They can speak to the enemies. They can take care of the enemies. Because you've taught them that God's at the center of it. God's at the center of their life. Realize God is doing the protecting, and they're turning it right back around on you as a parent. So see, that reward is coming back. So, as we see all of these things where God is at the center, and that's why I wanted to pick this song, because it's at the center of these songs of ascent. There's 7 before them and 7 after them, because I think this is the central part of it. And what Solomon is saying is, because God is at the center part of what we do. If they were singing these songs, where were they singing them going to? Worship? Going to the feast day, going to Jerusalem? Why? God was at the center of it. They're going there because that's what they were supposed to do. God is at the center of their life. And again, this is just another reminder of that while we're doing the things in which God said. We've studied a lot of Psalms as we've gone through these Psalms about being thankful to God, of praying to God, of just sometimes just praying prayers to God, not asking for anything, just asking for, just praising Him, just thanking Him for all that He's done. And we need these things to remind us to do that. And I think this psalm is just a reminder for us to realize, let's just take a break in our lives, whether it's our physical life, whether it's our spiritual life, both of them together, and ask ourselves, is God at the center of it? Look at every aspect of what we do, this self-examination. Boy, that's a little scary to think about doing. You think there's anything we can look at and say, I don't think I make God a part of that. Just like we talked about Sunday. It can be even the good things that's distracted us. I tell you, I've got some texts this week. I've got phone calls this week. I don't know how many of you have been called Mary this week and how many of you have been called Martha, but it's been pretty divided all week long. You know, I've had texts, would you tell Martha to get out of the kitchen and come back in here? You know, would you tell Mary to get up off the couch, come in here and help me? That's what I've heard since Sunday. But it can be distracting. Things can distract us, and I think this is what this psalm builds upon is we can get distracted with a lot of things in life. We can do a lot of things in life. We can do things that we're supposed to do in life. But if we still don't make God at the center of it, it's in vain. We did it for nothing. And it doesn't amount to it. It's like Paul said about love. I can do all these things, make all these great sacrifices, but if I don't have love, it doesn't profit me anything. And I think basically that's what Solomon is saying here. Any final thoughts, sir? I guess I turned this into a sermon instead of a Bible study. I didn't mean to do that. Sometimes I get up on that crate a little bit and start yelling. Any final thoughts, questions? Do we agree with Solomon? I didn't see a lot of head shaking tonight, so it kind of puts a mirror in front of our face, doesn't it? It kind of makes you think, maybe I don't have all this figured out like I thought I did, but God does, and that's who we can always turn to. And I hope that that's what we do.